Good evening, everyone, and welcome to the public scoping meeting for the proposed Copper Rays solar project. Thank you all very much for joining tonight. We are very appreciative of having a number of people who have joined and are able to participate this evening. My name is Caitlin Gillerin, and I am the consultant for the BLM. I will be facilitating the meeting tonight. Tonight's scoping meeting will include an introduction by the Pahrump Office Field Manager, Nicholas Pay, followed by introductions of the participants from the BLM Southern Nevada District and Panorama Environmental Incorporated, the third-party contractor who's facilitating tonight's session. After introductions, Whitney Worthland, BLM Project Manager, will present on the proposed Copper Rays solar project and provide a short overview of the BLM process. Followed by the presentation, there will be a question and answer session facilitated by Panorama Environmental with responses from the BLM. And then we'll open up the forum for public comment. Then we'll close out for the evening. This meeting will be recorded and the video will be posted to the project information webpage posted in the chat. Now we will turn it over to Nicholas, the Pahrump Field Manager, for a short introduction and an overview of our presenters and other participants for this evening's scoping meeting.
Thank you, Caitlin. Good evening, everyone, and welcome to the public scoping meeting for the proposed Copper Rays solar project. My name is Nicholas Pay. I am the field manager for the Bureau of Land Management's Pahrump Field Office. And I want to thank all of you for joining us tonight to learn more about the project and to provide comments and input on the proposed project. The Copper Rays solar project is located in the Pahrump Valley, south of State Route 160 and adjacent to the Clark County and Nye County line. The BLM completed the application evaluation review for this project in March of this year and has initiated the environmental review required by the National Environmental Policy Act, also known as NEPA. Input provided during the application evaluation will be carried forward into this NEPA process for the Copper Rays solar project. Tonight's meeting is part of the scoping period that will be open until January 13th, 2023. And the scoping process is an important part of initiating the NEPA process. During scoping, BLM asked for comments on input on the proposed project to better understand potential issues and concerns, as well as to develop a reasonable range of alternatives to the proposed action. Tonight's presentation will provide information on the proposed project and an overview of the NEPA process. As part of tonight's meeting, you'll have an opportunity to ask questions and provide your comments on the proposal. We will also explain what kind of information will be most helpful during the scoping period. Before we begin, I want to make sure that everybody knows that we're still in the early stages of the NEPA process, so we may not have all of the answers to your in-depth or specific questions. We'll work hard to provide answers, but please know that even hearing your questions will help us better understand what needs to be analyzed during the environmental review. As we begin the presentation, I'd like to introduce you to the speakers tonight. Whitney Worthland is the BLM's project manager for the Copper Rays solar project, and she will be providing an overview presentation on the project as well as the NEPA process. Whitney is joined by other BLM staff members who are shown on the screen and who are working hard behind the scenes to help answer your questions later in the meeting. At this time, I'd like to turn it back over to Caitlin to go over tonight's meeting format.
Thank you, Nicholas. Tonight's forum will provide opportunities for question and public comment. There will be a question and answer session where written questions can be submitted. There will also be an opportunity for verbal public comment toward the end of the scoping meeting. We'll have more information on these two opportunities later on. The BLM received multiple requests to extend the scoping period due to concerns about the timing overlapping with major holiday periods. The BLM reviewed these requests and has extended the public scoping period until January 13th, 2023. Comments and questions can be submitted via the Participate Now button on ePlanning, email to the email address on the screen, or via mail to the BLM Southern Nevada District Office. We will also provide this information in the chat for this forum. As mentioned on this slide, before including your address, phone number, email address, or other personal identifying information in your comment, you should be aware that your entire comment, including your personal identifying information, may be publicly available at any time. While you can ask that your personal identifying information be withheld from public review, the BLM cannot guarantee that they'll be able to do so. Anonymity is not allowed for submissions from organizations or businesses and from individuals identifying themselves as representatives or officials of organizations or businesses. Now Whitney will present an overview of the proposed Copper Rays solar project, as well as the BLM completed application evaluation process and the ongoing environmental compliance process.
Thank you, Caitlin. Good evening, everyone. Copper Rays Solar LLC, a subsidiary of Leeward Renewable Energy, submitted a right-of-way application for the Copper Rays Solar project for the construction, operation, maintenance, and eventual decommissioning of the proposed 700 megawatt solar photovoltaic power generating facility with interconnection to the regional transmission system and battery storage. The project is proposed on approximately 5,050 acres of BLM administered lands within the Pahrump Valley, southeast of the town of Pahrump and 40 miles northwest of Las Vegas. The BLM completed the application evaluation process for the Copper Rays Solar project in March 2022, which determined it appropriate to initiate the National Environmental Policy Act, or NEPA, process for the project. Additional information on the application evaluation process for the project will be presented later in the meeting, and it can be found at the project webpage, which we have included a link for in the chat. The map on the screen shows the proposed Copper Rays Solar project as the red polygon in the middle of the map, adjacent to the Clark-Nye County line and south of State Route 160. Copper Rays Solar LLC has proposed an approximately 5-mile-long generation tie line for the project, which is shown in green on the map. The proposed Gen-Tie line runs north of the project area, crossing State Route 160 and turning west to the existing Game Bird substation, identified as the black and yellow square on the map. Existing transmission lines and infrastructure would then be utilized to transmit the electricity to the grid from the Game Bird substation. The western edge of the project boundary is less than 1 mile from Hafen Ranch Road. This map shows the location of the proposed Copper Rays Solar project in relation to local roads and streets within the Pahrump Valley area, including Tacoma Springs Road, Brown Springs Road, Old Route 16, Hafen Ranch Road, and Trout Canyon Road. The table on the screen shows the proposed project components. The Copper Rays Solar project includes the installation of solar arrays within the project area, which are composed of solar photovoltaic modules on fixed tilt or single axis mounting systems. The solar arrays would connect to power conversion stations that would help transmit electricity to the on-site substation through a series of above ground and underground collection systems. Once the electricity reaches the on-site substation, it is delivered off-site to the existing Game Bird substation via the proposed interconnection Gen-Tie line. The project would also include the construction of 35 acres of battery storage facilities. The project would have a single primary access from State Route 160. Additional facilities proposed for construction include an operations and maintenance building, communication facilities, remote monitoring system, meteorological stations, and site security and fencing. An updated preliminary plan of development for the proposed project is available online at the project webpage, which we will provide a link for in the chat. The map on the screen shows the layout of the proposed solar arrays, project fence line, inter-array access roads, on-site substation, proposed construction move-on and lay-down areas, drainage basins, collection lines, and battery energy storage systems. The Copper Rays Solar project is proposed to be constructed in 2 phases. The first phase could generate 200 megawatts of energy, and the second phase could generate 500 megawatts of energy. The applicant has designed the proposed solar arrays to avoid some known resources within the project area, such as hydrologic features, drainages, vegetation, and recreation uses. Additionally, Copper Rays Solar LLC has proposed a reroute of an existing route that crosses through the western side of the project area, which is shown as the blue dashed line on the western project fence line. We'll explain more about the applicant proposed avoidance measures later in the presentation. Along with the analysis of the proposed solar project components, the environmental impact statement will include analysis of a resource management plan amendment for the visual resource management class and utility corridors that intersect with the project. In the BLM, land use plans are referred to as resource management plans, or RMPs. The RMP provides guidance for proposed projects and decisions within a geographic area and helps BLM manage those identified public lands. For the BLM Southern Nevada District, the approved RMP is the 1998 Las Vegas RMP. BLM regulations require that all actions and authorizations conform to the approved RMP. If a specific project cannot be modified sufficiently to conform to the RMP, then the RMP may be amended so that the project can then achieve that required conformance. In the case of the Copper Rays Solar Project, the BLM anticipates a RMP amendment to address project conformance with the area's Visual Resource Management, or VRM, classification, which was designated as VRM Class 3 in the RMP. BLM is considering amending the RMP so that the Visual Resource Management classification of the project area may be modified from Class 3 to Class 4. A utility scale solar project, such as Copper Rays, would be compatible with VRM Class 4 management objectives and therefore in conformance with the RMP. This slide visually displays the VRM Resource Management Plan amendment with the project boundary in blue, proposed GenTie line in green, and the designated VRM Class 3 shown as the dotted red layer. BLM will analyze the proposed RMP amendment in the same NEPA environmental impact statement as the solar project itself. As the environmental impact statement includes an RMP amendment, the draft EIS must be made available for a 90-day public comment period, and the final EIS must be presented to the governor's office for a 60-day consistency review to ensure that the project is consistent with local state plans, policies, and programs. During the scoping period, the BLM provides preliminary planning criteria for review, which is available at the project website. The BLM is also considering a RMP amendment to modify 2 utility corridors that intersect the Copper Rays Solar Project boundary. This resource management plan amendment would be considered during this planning process. However, this modification may be considered under another planning effort, like the BLM Nevada statewide RMP modernization process. The map on the slide shows the considered resource management plan amendment for the utility corridors, with the project boundary in blue and the 2 utility corridors that intersect the project area. These utility corridors include a west-wide energy corridor, shown as the black crisscross line layer, and a utility corridor designated by the 1998 Las Vegas RMP, shown as the yellow polygon. The flowchart on the screen shows the application evaluation process, which begins with the submittal of a project application. The application is then prioritized based on the regulations and involves BLM interdisciplinary team review. This helps the BLM prioritize and process the solar application workload more efficiently. After prioritization, the applications move into the solar application evaluation process, which involves BLM public information forums and agency coordination. When the evaluation is complete, the BLM will determine whether to continue to process the application and initiate the NEPA process. For the Copper Rays Solar Project, the BLM determined to continue processing the application and initiate the NEPA process. The scoping meetings are part of the early stages of the NEPA process for the project. The BLM completed application evaluation review of the Copper Rays Solar Project, including public outreach and coordination with appropriate federal, state, local, and tribal governments. Input was gathered through 2 virtual public information forums, an agency meeting, and associated input periods. During the public input period, 40 verbal comments and 67 additional input submissions via email or physical mail were received. Agency coordination on the project yielded 4 comment letters received during the input period. In addition to the public and agency input, the BLM sent letters and conducted field trips for Native American tribes to assess interests and concerns with the project. BLM also sent letters to initiate formal government-to-government consultation. Tribal consultation for the project is ongoing. Additional information on the input received during the application evaluation process for the Copper Ray Solar Project can be found at the project webpage. On the screen, you'll see a flow chart outlining the NEPA process for the Copper Ray Solar Project. The NEPA process begins with the publication of a notice of intent, announcing the intentions of the BLM to complete an environmental impact statement, and in the case of this project, a resource management plan amendment. The notice of intent for the project was published on November 14th, 2022, which initiates the public scoping period. The scoping period for the Copper Ray Solar Project was extended until January 13th, 2023. The scoping meeting tonight is included in this step of the NEPA process. After scoping, the BLM reviews the comments provided, generates issues to analyze, identifies any suggested alternatives, and develops the draft environmental impact statement and draft resource management plan amendment. The draft environmental impact statement for the project and the resource management plan amendment are published for a 90-day public review period, initiated by the publication of a notice of availability. Comments submitted during the public review period are reviewed, and substantive comments are responded to in the final EIS and proposed resource management plan amendment. The final EIS and proposed resource management plan amendment are made available for 30 days with the publication of a notice of availability. During the availability period, there is an additional review of the documents through a 30-day protest period and the Nevada Governor's consistency review of the final EIS and proposed resource management plan. If protests are received, they are responded to, and if no additional changes to the documents are necessary, then BLM would issue a record of decision for the environmental impact statement, which, if the project is approved, a right-of-way grant and notice to proceed would be generated. The input received during the application evaluation process yielded preliminary concerns identified by the public, local, state, federal agencies, and tribes, which are displayed on this slide. Additionally, the BLM conducted internal scoping of the project with the interdisciplinary team, which also generated preliminary resource concerns. These resources and issues will be considered during the analysis for the environmental impact statement. In order to adequately analyze the effects of the project, multiple resource technical studies have been completed or are scheduled to be completed. The list on the screen shows the technical studies that are currently required for the project, as well as the status or timeframe on when they would be completed. After the public scoping period, BLM will determine if any additional technical studies are needed to analyze effects from the project. The next few slides provide additional information on issues and resource concerns identified during the input period for the application evaluation process, as well as review of the proposed Copper Ray Solar Project by the BLM interdisciplinary team. These issues and resource concerns will be considered during the NEPA analysis for the project, along with those additional issues and resource concerns identified during the scoping process. Input gathered on the project identified potential concerns for biological and vegetation resources from the proposed Copper Ray Solar Project. Issues identified included effects to special status wildlife species, like the threatened and endangered desert tortoise, and impacts to sensitive vegetation and soils from the proposed solar project. To assist in the analysis of these identified resource concerns, the BLM has coordinated with the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service and is required to complete Section 7 consultation in compliance with the Endangered Species Act. This would include receiving a biological opinion from the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service, as well as a desert tortoise translocation plan. Additionally, the BLM has initiated coordination with the Nevada Department of Wildlife about potential impacts from the project. The U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service and the Nevada Department of Wildlife have accepted cooperating agency status for the project. The applicant, Copper Ray Solar LLC, has designed the solar arrays for the project to attempt to avoid direct impacts to known locations of Pahrump Valley buckwheat and mesquite bosques within the project boundary. These locations have been removed from the proposed solar array areas and no construction would occur. The extent of appropriate avoidance measures for these species would be reviewed and analyzed during the NEPA process, which includes scoping. Input received and BLM interdisciplinary review of the proposed project also identified issues and concerns related to visual resources and recreation opportunities within the project area. These included issues related to the visual resource management class for the area, views from State Route 160 and surrounding communities, recreation use of the project area, including off-highway vehicle use, hiking, equestrian use, and camping, and access to public lands. In order to help analyze these concerns, visual resource simulations are being completed, which would be fully described in a visual resources technical report. Additionally, the BLM and the applicant would be gathering data on the use of routes within and adjacent to the proposed project area. Copper Rays Solar LLC is proposing to maintain access to Old Route 16, where it crosses the project boundary by maintaining a fenced corridor through the proposed solar arrays on either side of the route. Additionally, Copper Rays Solar LLC has proposed a reroute of an existing route that intersects the western portion of the project. The proposed reroute would follow the project fence line to the southwestern corner of the project area and then connect to Old Route 16, which will have access maintained. These proposed designs to address recreation use would be reviewed and analyzed during the NEPA process, and other alternatives to addressing impacts to recreation opportunities may be considered. Input gathered also identified potential concerns with cultural and tribal resources from the proposed project. Input identified the project proximity to the Old Spanish National Historic Trail. Further review determined that the project is more than 7 miles from the National Historic Trail, which is outside of the interim 5-mile trail corridor. To help address and analyze these cultural and tribal resource concerns, the BLM will be consulting with the Nevada State Historic Preservation Office under Section 106 of the National Historic Preservation Act. This consultation process will be incorporated with the NEPA process for the project, and additional information on the National Historic Preservation Act process can be found at the project website. A cultural resources report was completed for the project, which BLM has reviewed and will be transmitting to the Nevada State Historic Preservation Office for their review and concurrence. The BLM has initiated engagement with Native American tribal governments, which included sending letters to invite the tribes to initiate formal government-to-government consultation and field trips to the proposed project. The BLM also invited the tribes to participate as cooperating agencies for the project. Tribal consultation for the project is ongoing. Potential impacts to air quality and climate change from the proposed Copper Rays Solar project were submitted during the input period. These included impacts from valley fever, greenhouse gas emissions, potential carbon sequestration loss from vegetation removal, temperature increase from proposed solar panels, and potential increases in fugitive dust and pollution. To assist with the analysis of these issues, the applicant is working on an air quality modeling and associated report. If you have any information or know of any peer-reviewed literature on these topics, that information would be appreciated during the scoping period. Potential impacts to socioeconomics, public safety, and transportation from the proposed Copper Rays Solar project were submitted during the input period. These included impacts to the local economies and communities, job creation, construction traffic, public safety due to project proximity to Pahrump, questions on the project as it relates to the proposed Pahrump bypass route, and project proximity to residences. To assist with the analysis of these issues, the applicant is preparing a traffic report with input and review from the Nevada Department of Transportation. The applicant is also completing an economic modeling report. Issues related to water use, identified source, and stormwater and erosion concerns were gathered during the input period and BLM interdisciplinary review of the project. The applicant will be required, as necessary, to receive a Section 404 Clean Water Act permit from the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers for any jurisdictional waters that may be impacted by the project. Jurisdictional waters determination for the project is ongoing. Copper Rays Solar LLC will also be required to obtain permits for the project from Nye County. The BLM will require a water supply assessment be completed by the applicant, which would identify the water source which would be utilized during construction and operation of the proposed project. Copper Rays Solar LLC is currently assessing water sources within the project area. Additionally, the applicant will provide a drainage study for the proposed project, which BLM and other federal and local governments will review. Input gathered during the application evaluation process yielded concerns about the proposed Copper Rays Solar project in relation to other proposed projects within the Pahrump Valley area. Impacts from the proposed projects and other actions within a given area and timeframe will be analyzed as part of the cumulative effects analysis for the project. Cumulative effects are those impacts on the environment that result from incremental impact of the proposed action when added to other past, present, and reasonably foreseeable future actions, regardless of who is undertaking the action. This means actions proposed on federal, state, local, or private lands with an identified area and timeframe would be included in the cumulative effects analysis. On the screen, you will see a map of the proposed solar projects within the Pahrump Valley that are at various stages of review and processing by the BLM. These proposed projects are considered reasonably foreseeable future projects and would be included in the cumulative effects analysis for the Copper Rays Solar project. Other past, present, and reasonably foreseeable future actions will be identified during the NEPA process, including the scoping period. On the map, you will see the Copper Rays Solar project highlighted in blue striping. On the map, you will see the 4 other proposed projects and 1 currently authorized project located within the Pahrump Valley. The Rough Hat Clark County Solar project, shown as the purple triangle, just finished the scoping period on December 5th, 2022. Information on the Rough Hat Clark County Solar project, including project information and recordings of the scoping meetings, can be found at the project website, which we'll include a link to in the chat. The Golden Current and Mosey Solar projects, shown in brown and teal on the map respectively, are currently undergoing review. The Golden Current project is undergoing variance process review, and the Mosey Solar project is undergoing internal BLM review and was determined to be a medium priority project. The Rough Hat Nye County Solar project, shown as the green colored boundary, is currently paused while the applicant coordinates with Nye County and the local community to address concerns with the proposed project layout. On the map, you will also see the location of the approved Yellow Pine Solar project, shown in yellow, which was authorized with a record of decision in the fall of 2020. If you have any information on additional projects or actions within or adjacent to the proposed Copper Rays Solar project, that information would be helpful for the NEPA analysis. Currently, we are in the public scoping period for the Copper Rays Solar project. Tonight's public scoping meeting and the scoping period that lasts until January 13th, 2023, provide you an opportunity to provide comments on the project. The information gathered during the meeting and the scoping period will inform the NEPA process and assist BLM in determining issues, impacts, and potential alternatives that would be addressed in the upcoming analysis. After the public scoping meetings have concluded, we will continue to gather comments on the project until January 13th, 2023. The information we gathered will be considered in the draft environmental impact statement and resource management plan amendment, which is expected summer 2023. More information on the project can be found at the project webpage on the screen, which has also been provided in the chat. Helpful input and comments from you would include suggestions on how to refine the proposed project with methods for reducing or avoiding impacts to resources, including wildlife, botanical species, soils, landscape views, water resources, or recreation opportunities. Comments on reasonable alternatives to the proposed action would also be helpful. Other helpful information includes identification of specific issues or concerns which may be evaluated in detail in the analysis, as well as identifying other past, present, or future actions within or adjacent to the project area. At this time, I'm going to turn the meeting back over to Caitlin, who will begin the question and answer session.
That concludes the presentation. We will now have a question and answer section on the Copper Rays Solar Project. Questions can be submitted using the question and answer box by following the instructions on this slide. At the bottom of your screen, you should see a Q&A feature to submit questions. Please understand that some questions will be answered live during this question and answer session, while some may be answered in writing in the Q&A feature. Anyone can see all of the questions answered in the chat by clicking on the Show All button. As questions begin to come in, I will facilitate asking the questions as the project manager, Whitney Worthland, will answer them. As a reminder, while we are waiting for any questions to come in, you are also able to comment using the Participate Now button on ePlanning via email or mail to the BLM Southern Nevada District Office until January 13th, 2023. We'll begin with a question from the registration. There was a request about the West Side Energy Corridor and how it intersects the project boundary.
Sure. So as we stated in the presentation as well, there is a West-Wide Energy Corridor that does intersect the eastern portion of the Copper Rays Solar Project boundary. As such, the BLM is considering an RMP amendment to modify not only that utility corridor, but also the 1998 Las Vegas RMP designated corridor with a resource management plan amendment. That amendment would be considered during this planning process. However, the modification to these utility corridors may also be considered during another planning effort, such as the BLM Nevada statewide RMP modernization process.
Thank you for your patience as we are waiting for questions to get organized. A question from the registration while we wait to get organized. Where will the 500 acre-feet of water come from?
So the project does anticipate needing up to 500 acre-feet of water per year for construction. And then in operations and maintenance, it would be less than 10 acre-feet per year. Construction of the project is expected to occur within two distinct phases. Phase 1 would last 21 months, and then phase 2 is expected to last 33 months. The project applicant, Copper Rays Solar LLC, has indicated that the water for construction and operations and maintenance would be purchased from nearby and existing water rights owners, and no new water rights would be secured. The applicant would also work to engage in best practices for the project and has committed to complying with all regulations, as well as coordinating with the Nevada State Water Engineer, and then implementing any other measures to ensure groundwater basin integrity.
An additional question, could the water rights be purchased within Pahrump Valley or Nye County?
The proposed project is located in the Pahrump Valley Basin, which no new water rights are currently available. The Nevada Division of Water Resources is responsible for the allocation of water resources within the state of Nevada. Water could be purchased from existing water rights holders within the basin. Regardless, BLM would consider impacts to water use on connected resources during the analysis in the environmental impact statement.
While we are waiting for questions to be organized, I just want to remind everybody that the scoping period is through January 13th, 2023. After this meeting, you will be able to comment via email, on e-planning, or mail. New question. What is the desert tortoise density here from surveys?
Desert tortoise surveys were completed April 1st through April 8th of 2021. From those surveys, 55 live adult tortoises and 5 juvenile tortoises were observed within the project area. Based upon these surveys as well, and a survey-informed model, we can estimate that 137 total desert tortoises within the project area. And there's a calculated tortoise density from those surveys as well that would be 6.7 tortoises per square kilometer.
New question. How is the town of Pahrump supposed to have capacity to expand, where BLM has effectively blocked all the land to the south with solar projects, effectively cutting off our economic growth capacity?
So the BLM is required to respond to applications that are submitted. Currently, we are conducting an environmental review to consider this application, and we're in the public scoping period. Comments made during the scoping, including the concern you're identifying at this time for expanse of the town, would be considered as part of this process. If there's any additional information, we would love to have that submitted related to your concern. You can send that information to the email address that is in the chat, or you can also submit comments through e-planning using the Participate Now function.
New question. Please explain the disc and roll land clearing method. Does it disturb desert pavement?
Sure. So the disking is a type of tilling that will break up the soil and vegetation and creates a more uniform soil surface. This type of construction practice would disturb desert pavement.
A new question. Why are you so determined to build in Pahrump?
Sure. So as we stated, the applicant Copper Race Solar LLC has identified and applied for the proposed Copper Race Solar site. BLM did complete the application prioritization process as well as the application evaluation review of the proposed project. The application evaluation process involved public and agency meetings, as well as additional agency and tribal coordination. From the information that was gathered during that process, the BLM did determine to continue to process the Copper Race Solar project and initiate the NEPA process. Input gathered during the application evaluation process will then be incorporated into the NEPA process for the project, which includes issues and alternatives identification and additional information on the application evaluation determination can be found at the project website.
While we are waiting for questions to be organized, just a reminder that you are also able to comment using the Participate Now button on ePlanning via email or mail to the BLM Southern Nevada District Office until January 13th, 2023. A question: why can't there be an updated visual corridor criteria developed, as the one you are using is nearly 25 years old?
Sure. So we would appreciate any additional information on the visual corridor criteria and about your concern, so that can be considered during the process. You can submit that information to the email that we put in the chat, or you can also use the ePlanning Participate Now function.
Thank you for your patience as we continue to organize questions.
Are you doing
While we are waiting for the questions to be organized, I do want to remind everybody that the scoping period is through January 13th, 2023. And after this meeting, there are several ways that you can submit comments, including on ePlanning, by email, or mail. New question: if the project is approved, will associated oil and gas drilling also be authorized per the Inflation Reduction Act? Where is the oil and gas drilling to be authorized?
So the Inflation Reduction Act conditions the issuance of a right-of-way for wind and solar energy development on public lands based on two things. The BLM having held an onshore lease sale during the 120-day period before the issuance of the wind and solar energy development for those rights of way on public land. And then the second thing is BLM having offered in 1 year period preceding the date of the issuance of the right of way, the lesser of 2 million acres of 50% or 50% of the acreage for which the expressions of interest had been submitted. Following the NEPA review process, if the BLM does issue a record of decision approving the project, the BLM will ensure compliance with the Inflation Reduction Act provisions prior to issuing the solar development right of way.
New question: how can the 5,000 acre Copper Rays solar project use 500 acre feet of water during construction, while the smaller Rough Hat Clark is going to use 800?
The water needs for those two projects have been identified based on water needs assessments that were prepared by the project sponsors. The BLM is currently in the scoping process for that project and for this project, and would appreciate any scientific literature, data, or any other information that may assist in the preparation of the environmental analysis, including any literature related to water usage or water hydrology within the basin. please submit that information to the email that we put in the chat. You can also use ePlanning to submit a comment and attach documents to that comment.
A new question: is the area being considered for a new solar energy zone under the new solar programmatic EIS revision or statewide RMP revision?
Sure. So the Secretary of the Interior did recently announce that the BLM will be updating the 2012 solar PEIS based on information of improved technology, new transmission infrastructure, and also the administration's clean energy goals. As part of that update, the BLM is considering adding more states, adjusting exclusion areas, exclusion criteria, and seeking to also identify new or expanded areas to prioritize solar development. That update process will be published in the Federal Register, which will open a 60-day public comment period. If you'd like to provide comment on the potential update to the solar PEIS, they're also having public scoping meetings, both in person and virtually. We can post in the chat the ePlanning webpage for the solar project update, and we'll put that in there so you could check out information on that and also register or plan to attend those meetings. Specific to the Copper Rays Solar Project, that is a separate planning process from the planning process for the solar PEIS update. Both proposals are currently in early stages of the NEPA process, so it's unknown at this time how they would interact. As both NEPA documents progress, the BLM Southern Nevada District will coordinate with our BLM headquarters office to determine what is needed for the Copper Rays solar analysis. I think the last part of that question was also about the statewide RMP revision. So the Nevada-wide Resource Management Plan Modernization Project is being managed by the BLM Nevada State Office, and a timeline has not yet been established.
Thank you for everyone's patience as we continue to organize questions. New question: what type of containment will be around the battery storage complex?
Engineering renderings for the battery storage complex are in the development stage have not yet been submitted to date.
Question: to what extent does the BLM plan to evaluate the cumulative impacts of the various proposed and reasonably certain future projects in the area, given the concentration of existing and pending projects in the Pahrump Valley?
Sure. So as we kind of explained in the presentation, we'll be identifying and evaluating those potential impacts from the Copper Rays Solar Project, as well as cumulatively those other related past, present, and reasonably foreseeable future actions during the environmental analysis for the EIS. In order to ensure these effects are fully considered, the BLM is requesting any information during the scoping period related to other past, present, and reasonably foreseeable actions that are proposed on federal, state, local, or even private lands in the vicinity of the proposed project. So if you do have any information on additional projects outside of those ones that we've identified within the Pahrump Valley that are proposed and under review, we would appreciate that during the scoping period. You can describe that during verbal comments at the meeting later in the meeting. You can also provide that written through the options we've had in the chat. Additionally, public involvement and agency coordination, as well as Native American tribal consultation, will also help inform our cumulative effects analysis and further define those issues and reasonably foreseeable actions.
As a reminder, while we wait for questions to be organized, you are also able to comment using the Participate Now button on e-planning via email or mail to the BLM Southern Nevada District Office till the end of scoping on January 13th, 2023. New question. Will the project offer me money for my land if it falls within the project's area?
Sure. So the BLM cannot respond to this question. The project sponsor, Copper Ray Solar LLC, determines their own outreach to the local community for the project.
New question. That was great beat around the bush. The question is, why are you determined to build solar farms in Pahrump instead of building in non-populated areas?
So the BLM is responding to applications that have been submitted. Like we stated, we're currently in the environmental review for the consideration of the application, and that's where we're conducting public scoping to inform the analysis. Once drafted, the draft environmental impact statement and the resource management plan amendment would be made available for public review and comment. And then the final EIS and the resource management plan amendment will inform BLM's decision on the application. We welcome your comments during this process for consideration in the development of the environmental review.
Thank you for your patience as we are waiting for questions to be organized. New question. What chemicals are approved for use as dust palliatives?
So right now the BLM does not have that information on hand. However, that would be part of our restoration plan that would be developed for the project. And as that is developed as part of the NEPA process, that would be available for public review.
While we are waiting for the questions to be organized, just a reminder to everybody that the scoping period is through January 13th, 2023. And after this meeting, there are several ways in which you can comment, including on e-planning, on email, or mail. Thank you for your patience as we continue to organize questions. New question. Will this project increase business for the city of Pahrump?
So socioeconomic or economic impacts from the project are not known at this time. However, that was information that was submitted during the application evaluation process. And so we will be carrying forward that information into the NEPA analysis. And to help with that analysis of economic impacts of the project to local communities, we will be completing the applicant is currently completing an economic modeling report, which BLM will review, and that will be provided for review during the draft environmental impact statement process.
While we are waiting for final questions to be organized, just a reminder that there are other ways to comment, including via participate now button on e-planning, email, or mail. New questions come in. What are the land reclamation requirements?
As part of the environmental review process and during the NEPA process, a restoration plan, which would be focused on minimizing and repairing construction impacts, and a decommissioning plan, which would be focused on the end of life reclamation. Both of those plans would be developed using the Southern Nevada District BLM standard templates. If the project is approved, the BLM would also require the applicant to provide an adequate reclamation bond to cover the full decommissioning and restoration of the site. All projects are required to submit a bond prior to ground disturbing activities, which includes construction. And having a reclamation bond in place for an approved project means that the company was able to complete decommissioning. If the company was unable to complete decommissioning for any reason, the BLM could attach that bond and utilize those funds up to the full amount identified to complete decommissioning and restoration.
Question. How can we make it known that we want the projects you have shown in this presentation to be reevaluated based on updated PEIS stipulations that are to be upcoming? Why do these projects have to be pushed through when updates are coming? We are going to be victimized by old regulations, all for the benefit of the applicants, when the land belongs to the citizens, not the applicants.
As mentioned and referenced in the comment, the BLM did recently publish the notice of intent for that update to the solar PEIS. And we will put the website information for that update process. They will be opening a 60-day comment period for that update for folks to submit comments and information for that process. The update to the solar PEIS is a separate planning process. However, we do also welcome comments that assist in the preparation of the environmental review for the solar project.
Thank you. That concludes our verbal question and answer session. However, as a reminder, we will be answering questions until 8 p.m. using the Q&A feature. We will now transition on to the verbal input section. As I noted, we will not be answering questions live. If you have any additional questions, you can continue to drop them into the Q&A box and we will respond in writing, or you can email or mail any remaining questions to the BLM. As a reminder, anyone can see all the questions answered in the chat using the Show All button. We are now going to take verbal comments following the order in which people pre-registered and said yes or maybe to wanting to provide public comments. Please use the raise hand feature at the bottom of the screen and the facilitator will open your microphone. If you are on the phone, you can raise your hand with *9 and then unmute and mute using *6. You will see a 2-minute timer on the next slide, and this will display the amount of time you have for your public comment. We are reserving 2 minutes per public comment. Your comment will be included in the project public record. After going through the list of those people who pre-registered to speak, we will move on to anyone who may want to provide public input that did not identify that they wanted to provide comments when they registered. The BLM wants to hear from all members of the public. However, out of respect for everyone's participation and input, we do ask that you follow these guidelines. Please stay within your allotted 2-minute time period. On this slide, you will be able to see as your time is running out. We ask that you please watch this timer and be cognizant of the time allotted and to ensure you can wrap up your comment. Please be respectful of others that are speaking and refrain from using profanity. If these guidelines are not followed, your microphone will be muted and we will have to move on to the next person. All right, let's go ahead and get started. Up first, we have Dawn and Susie Hertz. If you could please raise your hand. Perfect.
Good evening. My main concern and my comment of this evening is with regard to location. When you look at the map that you put up this evening, which we've seen many times already, of the 5 to 6+ installations that you plan to put in Nye and Clark counties along Route 160, and you look at the visual impact and the natural impact of such a vast amount of mileage of land that is going to impact us in so very many ways in such a populated area, it's really frightening. On the other hand, if a person got in a car and drove to the west into California, into some very unpopulated areas, and very logically drove toward Baker, California, there's access to power lines, there's access to water, and there are very unpopulated areas. And this is just one minor example of a place where the BLM land could be utilized with much less impact to so many people, so much environment, and so much nature. And I am making a plea on behalf of myself and my fellow citizens that you evaluate someplace like that rather than this populated area, which is prone to growth between here and Las Vegas, and an existing town of a couple hundred years of history that you are now damaging and destroying both socially and economically and environmentally by your choice of putting this power, which is going to be used in California and not benefited from here in Nevada, by putting the power in the state who's going to use the power in the first place. Right? That is a very serious plea, and I will make it continuously till you move it. Thank you.
Thank you. Up next, we have Kevin Emmerich. If you could please raise your hand. Great. Are you able to unmute?
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Hi, my name is Kevin Emmerich. My organization is Basin and Range Watch, and you're talking about a very high desert tortoise density in this day and age. About 20 years ago or so, if you said there were 6.7 per square kilometer, that would probably be a low density compared to a lot of the recovery units. Like over in the West Mojave Desert, they had in the 1990s 200 per square mile, up to that on some of the recovery units. So it tells you what's happened. The desert tortoise is crashing in populations. This population, however, you're saying 137 maybe on the site. That could be an undercount. And at 6.7 per square mile in 2022 is higher than now most of the recovery units. I would like to request that you delay this project and a lot of the other projects in the South Pahrump Valley until you can revise that Nevada resource management plan and revise them all, simply because that would give us an opportunity to say, hey, slow down on these solar projects and let's protect the tortoise. Let's slow down and let's not enable the extinction of this species. Really, that's the keystone. There are several others. There are no doubt millions of living organisms on that 5,000 acre, 8 square mile site that will be crushed and killed by those bulldozers. This is a net biodiversity loss for solar panels that do the same job on rooftops and over parking lots. Would really be immoral to approve this project. Thank you.
Thank you, Kevin. Up next, we have Michael Fender. If you would like to speak, please raise your hand and we can allow you to unmute yourself. Perfect.
There we go. You got it?
Yep, works great.
Okay, you can hear me. Good. I did it right. First of all, I'd like to say thanks to Don and Susie Hertz for their comment. I don't see the clock moving. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay.
Thank you
And
for checking.
what Kevin said as well. I concur with what both of them say. I presently would live about 1.25 miles from this particular project. So I really don't want to be looking at a large junkyard every day, several times a day, or maybe once or twice a week when I'm going that direction. I fear this is where it's coming to. We have too much here in Pahrump Valley that needs to be consumed by such material objects. I can understand they have a meaning, but this meaning is we are giving up where we live for other people elsewhere that are millions compared to only, what, 50,000 here in the Pahrump Valley to have something like this consume the valley. This is only one of the 6 solar projects that are proposed, well, besides current, yellow pine. But you also have another one, I understand it's about 9,000 acres. That's going to be up there by Mount Pelosny along the Sandy Valley Road, which is up before the Nevada Utility Commissions. So when I look at this overall picture, you're literally going to turn this valley into a junkyard. And what'll happen is the heat will rise, land values are going to drop, people are going to move away. And if that's what you really want to see, our government wants to see, is you're basically kicking people off their own land, forcing them off because of these particular projects. There's by variances, there's 9.1 million other acres throughout Nevada in places that do not have such populations. And it's written right in that PEIS. Anyway, that's all I have to say. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Michael. Next, we have Laura Cunningham. If you could please raise your hand if you would like to speak, we will allow you to unmute yourself. I see you unmuted. Are you able to speak? I cannot hear you if you are speaking. I unfortunately still cannot hear you. Perhaps we can try again. Oh,
Hello,
oh, yes,
you can't hear me?
perfect. Yes, yep, now we can.
Hello,
Yep,
hello,
we
hello.
we hear you.
Okay, there was quite a delay there in the Okay, my comment is, I've looked at the Yellow Pine solar project under construction and it really does destroy the desert. It has 8-foot tall chain link fences with barbed wire that keep the public out. This is a important recreation land. It has biodiversity. And I just think that making South Pahrump Valley into an industrial energy zone is not the right thing to do for Nevada, for people that recreate there and live there, and for the biodiversity. I mean, the tortoises, that's in, as Kevin said, that's incredibly high density, higher than most critical habitat units. So we've got a thriving Mojave Desert tortoise ecosystem there, habitat, but we're going to destroy it for so-called green energy. That's not green. Thanks, that's all I have.
Thank you, Laura. Up next, we have Teresa Sky. If you could please raise your hand, we can allow you to speak. Teresa, if you are on, please raise your hand if you would like to speak. If you would like to speak later in the afternoon, you do have that opportunity, as once we get through the pre-registered list, we will open it up. As such, I will move on to Linda Marianito. If you could please raise your hand if you would like to speak, and then you can unmute. All right, we will move on to Simone. If you are interested in speaking at this time, please do raise your hand and you will be provided the opportunity to speak. All right, we will move on to Lawrence Calkins. If you are interested in talking at this time, please do raise your hand and you will have the opportunity to unmute and speak. As a reminder to everybody, once we get through the pre-registered list, we will provide an open opportunity for other people to speak as well. All right, we will move on to David McLeod. If you would like to speak, please do raise your hand. All right, we will move on to Shannon Salter. If you are interested in speaking at this time, please do raise your hand. We will allow you to speak. Right, up next, we have David Attaway. If you are on and you would like to comment at this time, please do raise your hand. We will allow you to unmute. Up next, we have Marcus Pearson. If you would like to provide a verbal comment, please raise your hand and we will give you the opportunity to speak. Okay, the last person that pre-registered is Heather Gang. If you would like to provide a verbal comment, please raise your hand. Perfect.
Hi, I have kind of a bad internet connection. connection, so I apologize if I cut out. I see there are many resource conflicts with this project, just from looking at your own project priority determination worksheet. So I'm not going to tell you anything you don't already know. Natural riparian wetlands are nearby. It's a sensitive hydrogeographic basin, over allocated basin. So, you know, we shouldn't be passing projects that will pump more water in our basin. Sensitive soil resources, and you know, some really beautiful desert pavements out there that take hundreds of thousands of years to form. I seriously doubt they'll be able to restore those, and they definitely won't be able to put this in without damaging those. It's sensitive habitat for desert tortoise and maybe Pahrump Valley buckwheat. And nearby mesquite bosques are important for birds. Those are all from your own analysis. You say in your analysis that groundwater issues are not influencing the priority level until additional information is gathered. Well, how far do you let the process go before you start getting this information and making these decisions? You know, the same thing with the decommissioning and reclamation plan. It says in the report that doesn't even have to be developed until 6 months prior to closure. Well, it's too late then. The vegetation and the soils are destroyed, and you have no plan for how to reclaim them. And you know, in the last meeting, the Rough Hat Clark, you said that you would be happy with 60% reclamation of plants. And I don't know whether you mean 60% of the biodiversity, 60% of the covered area by plants, or you know, you don't explain what you mean by that. Thank you.
Thank you, Heather. Right, those are all of the people who pre-registered to speak. We will now open the floor for anyone who did not pre-register but would like to speak. Please use your raise hand function and we will unmute you and provide you the opportunity to give a verbal comment. As a reminder, while we wait for people to decide if they'd like to provide a verbal comment, there are several other ways that you can comment after this comment period. After the scoping meeting, sorry. You can email to the Southern Nevada District Office, you can mail, and you can also go to ePlanning for the Participate Now button. Anyone would like to provide a verbal comment, please do raise your hand and we will allow you the opportunity to provide that comment. Heather.
Yeah. In the beginning of your presentation, you basically said that if the project doesn't fit the resource management plan or the visual resource management class, you're going to change the resource management plan so the project can proceed. Do you realize how bad that sounds? I agree with Kevin Emmerich that these things are being pushed through so fast that the issues can't be properly addressed. There's so many projects right now pending, threatening our valley here and valleys throughout Nevada. And I'd just like to say the same thing I said at the last meeting, that we can't afford to lose more wildlife habitat on this planet. We're in an extinction crisis, and habitat loss is one of the driving factors And I know you think this is going to fix climate change, but the habitat loss is just as big of an issue as climate change. That's it. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Heather. Michael Fender.
Thanks for letting me speak again. I would just like to add that if people were to actually, if they were to do this same thing in another part of the United States, where it's highly forested, where people go camping, where people go fishing, where people hunt, and where we get our lumber to build things, and you start tearing down the forests to build solar farms, do you really believe, does the BLM believe, and all the other agencies provided in this project, you really think they're going to do that by destroying the habitat in a forested area as such? I mean, that's really, I know that's a loaded question, but I think everybody needs to see it from the other side of the fence. And this is no different. All we have is creosote. We got tortoises, we got badgers, we got yucca. That's our forest. And like I said before, there's another 9 million acres someplace else within this state that can be utilized. It's already been sort of scorched, so what you might say. So Nevada's got a lot to offer, but there's other areas other than here than, let's say, yeah, there's other areas other than here. That's all I have to say. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Michael. Up next, we have Edward LeBlanc.
Can you hear me? Hello?
Yes, we can.
Great. I just wanted to add, like, some of the things that some of the people commented on is that, and I agree, there's other areas around here that they can build this stuff. Why do they have to encroach right up to our backyard with these solar panels? That there is a study out that this increases the heat range in our area. There's, like I said before, it's other areas that can be built. There's a lot of desert space in right over the border in California that they could build these things. They don't need to be building this stuff right in our backyard. And I am going to be going to commissioners meetings. I'm going to join my fellow people from Pahrump, and we're going to try to stop this corporation that is trying to kill our area, that I plan to move here to enjoy this area for my retirement. And now I got this big corporation trying to destroy my property, destroy my way of life here. And I just don't like it. It makes me very, very mad. And I'm going to try my best to join everybody in this town. And we are going to try to stop this place, or stop these guys from doing this to us. That's all I got to add.
Thank you, Edward. Up next, we have Kevin Emmerich. Kevin, are you able to unmute? Yes.
Can you hear me now?
Yes, we can.
Okay, thank you. Kevin Emmerich again, Basin and Rangewood. Thank you. The solar projects here are being permitted by the BLM, are being reviewed simply because there's a political mandate to do so. I want to point out that I feel that the folks in the Southern Nevada office have really been doing a good job as far as being transparent, providing us with information and explaining how this process works. That being said, those politics seem to be nullifying the very purpose for building these projects. So solar energy, in order to achieve what other conventional forms of energy have to, needs to use a lot of land. That's a low density energy. And so multiple acres, square mileage is required in order to achieve these goals. We get that. So we have this political mandate called the Inflation Reduction Act, and I can't even remember what page it's on, but it says for every solar project permitted, 2 million acres of oil and gas leases will be permitted onshore and something like 60 million offshore. So let's ask ourselves, what is the purpose of having this project? On a political scale, on a presidential scale, we hear it's for climate change. So what happens here? We permit 5,000 acres or how many megawatts of solar panels, and then we permit a bunch of oil drilling. So can somebody explain that to me? Nobody can because it's politics. But when in your environmental review, let's think about this, because we are talking bulk biodiversity loss. We're talking loss of many cultural resources. And yes, the town of Pahrump and South Pahrump, those people are going to get hit pretty hard with fugitive dust, probably water table lowering, and just depression. They're just going to have to live next to this monstrosity. So yes, in your purpose and need, consider, will it even offset CO2 emissions with so many required oil and gas leases associated? Thank you.
Thank you, Kevin. Up next, we have Dawn and Susie Hertz.
Hi, thank you. I just wanted to make a comment or a plea to you, the BLM. I was just looking and analyzing how many people are participating in this evening's comments as a gauge to how many people might be listening to this meeting this evening. And considering that we live in a town of 50,000 people and that there were 15 people set up to make comments this evening, that's a pretty catastrophic small response of participants. And it tells me that there are very few people who are aware of this process of meetings and opportunity to hear what's going on and have input to the process. And so my plea to you, BLM, is to find a way, an effective way to notify the public beyond getting on a mailing list, an email list that you get from peer to peer, like maybe putting a publication notice in the Pahrump Valley Times, in the Valley Electric publication that goes out to every electric power user in the Pahrump Valley. Take some responsibility for what you're doing in notifying the public so we have an opportunity to get some information from you, to give you some information so this doesn't feel as if the snow is and the wool is being pulled over our eyes as a population. I would feel a little bit more comfortable if we felt as if you were being a little bit more proactive than just a random, I got on a mailing list and an email list because I knew somebody. That's my request as a citizen, and you are legislating for we the citizens. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Would anybody else like to provide a verbal comment? If so, please raise your hand at this time. All right, those are all the people who have asked to speak at this time. As one more reminder, looks like we do have just one additional person here who raised their hand. So I think that we'll just go ahead and have Fred Sauberman please speak.
Can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Okay, thank you. All I've heard tonight is negativity. I'm wondering why nobody has mentioned about the clean energy that may be provided to the city of Pahrump, and also about the increase for business and the increase for land value if such a company comes over here to establish their work. So I ask everybody who's listening to think about that question or maybe respond to it. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Fred. It looked like that was the last person with their hand raised at this time. So we will, just as a reminder, the public scoping comment period is open until January 13th, 2023. And there are several ways in which you can comment after this meeting concludes at 8 p.m. You can comment via email, sending in a hard copy comment, or using the Participate Now button on the BLM e-planning website. I am now going to shift it over to Nicholas, who will do a brief closeout.
Yeah, thank you, Caitlin. Also, thank you to everybody that provided comments, either questions in the comment or questions in the question and answer stuff, and your verbal comments. You guys have really given us a lot that we can use as we move forward. We're looking forward to working closely with you guys. This will be a pretty open and transparent process. As we mentioned earlier, we're just starting and getting through those processes, and we have some pretty hard decisions coming down the road, and it'll be good to have everybody's input. Again, we're thankful for all of you guys' input and comments. As far as getting the information out to others, again, feel free to share this information. These meetings are being recorded so people can go back and rewatch them and provide comments to us through the various ways that have been shown here on the screen. So this isn't the last time. And again, we'll have the public comment period open for about a month longer, get you through the holidays and into next year. So again, thanks for all your input, and we look forward to seeing you guys again in the future.
Thank you everyone for attending tonight. We will be on until 8 p.m. and people will have the opportunity to provide additional verbal comment if they wish by raising their hand, or you can submit questions into the Q&A feature, which will be answered there, in addition to the myriad of other ways by which you can comment. Thank you.